Good afternoon. Welcome to our weekly livestock market update. I'm Brownfield News Anchor reporter Megan Grebner. With us is University of Missouri Scott Brown. Good afternoon, Scott.
Good afternoon, Megan.
All right, we have a ton of reports to get into and to talk about today. But first, as we do every week, let's kick things off with a little bit of a market recap.
Yeah, if you look at markets this week, by and large, we're going to talk about another down week in these markets. Live cattle prices, we'll call them down $3 for the week. Feeder cattle also were steady to 3 lower as we went through the week. On the futures side, we were fairly flat on live cattle for the week. Not a lot of movement from start to finish, despite what might have been a lot of volatility through the week. On the feeder cattle side, we did increase nearly $3 on most feeder cattle contracts. I think the fact that we saw lower corn prices on the board this week was helpful to what happened to feeder cattle futures this week. The choice beef cutout value was down about $4.50 for the week. When we look at the hog side of the market, we're down on cash hog prices, over $4 lower for the week. We also saw a pork cutout value that was down about $3.60 for the week. And that was led completely by pork belly prices that were lower. We were down nearly $29 on pork belly prices for the week. And in fact, we were up for the rest of the components of that pork cutout value for the week. So a lot of volatility, as we talked about last week, in pork belly prices continue as we look at what's been happening this week.
When we look at those big declines, I want to talk a little bit about the choice select spread, specifically on the beef side of things. We reached our peak earlier in the year. We are significantly lower than that. And we're also seeing a decline in the belly prices. How much of this can be related or correlated to what goes on seasonally?
Yeah, so I think when you look at where pork belly prices have been going, we would seasonally expect them to be lower. That's the trend that we would see normally. And many times we talk about maybe coming to towards the end of summer, a little bit of BLT fatigue, if you will, that's been occurring. When you look at the choice select spread, I think at the same time you can talk about perhaps a little less grilling that's at least is starting to wind down. That might narrow that spread. We've got more supplies of cattle grading choice right now, so it's traditional that we talk about that choice select spread that's much narrower right now this time of year. When you look at that very narrow spread, it's not a record by any stretch on that choice select spread. So supplies of choice of cattle grading choice certainly narrows that as we go through the year.
All right, let's get into the reports. Let's start first. Cold storage numbers came out on Tuesday. As we take a look at that, what are the big highlights from that report?
Yeah, I think, Megan, we really need to start there by reminding everyone that there's really no red flags out of that report. It's nice to continue to see freezers that, by and large, are staying fairly current. When you look at the pork side, pork supply is down 7% on the year, setting at about 556 million pounds. That was frankly lower than most folks thought pre-report. Tells us that domestic demand remains strong, and export demand on top of that seems to be canceling out what's been large production runs. Belly stocks, of course, stole the show. I think again we're at record low, monthly low of pork belly stocks, setting at 17.6 million pounds. Beef stocks were also below year-ago levels, maybe a few more stocks than we would have thought pre-report. But still, given the increase in beef production we've seen, it's nice to see beef stocks below year-ago levels. So that's the good news. I think that we see demand continuing both domestically and internationally to keep freezer stocks in reasonable shape.
And despite maybe the weakening demand for bacon, it still is wanted and it's still being picked up.
For us economists, when we talk about record low belly stocks and a big drop in belly prices this week, it might be hard for us to explain in economic principle terms, but it does remind us there's more at play, and hopefully demand for bacon continues to be strong as we move forward.
All right, as we wind through our reports, livestock slaughter numbers came out this week, and really I think the number everybody's going to want to pay attention to is that beef cow slaughter number.
Yeah, absolutely. So, overall, that report certainly continued to confirm that we're producing more beef and pork. That's not new news for us, but in many ways, we're trying to start to look at what's happening to the beef cow herd. Is it growing? Is it shrinking? The fact that we can see year-to-date beef cow slaughter is up 11%. Some might read that as really good news that we're finally going to start to talk about fewer beef cows. I'd remind us that 11% increase comes primarily because 2016 was also very low. So yes, we're moving in the right direction to decrease the rate of growth in that beef cow herd. I'm not certain we've done enough yet to talk about turning down that beef cow herd as we look ahead. So again, some good news, at least we're getting some growth. I've really been looking out of that report to see whether what's been happening in the Dakotas with very dry weather, we can find that we've moved a lot more beef cows. Hard to see that in the data yet, but certainly anecdotally, I hear a lot of concern about the number of beef cows that have moved out of the Dakotas just because of drought.
And to round out the trifecta of reports, cattle on feed numbers came out today, and not a negative report by any means.
Yeah, it's certainly nice to be able to see a situation where, yes, we have more cattle, but if you remember, June placements scared us on the upside with being much larger than we anticipated. The actual report for July said we placed 102.7. That's below pre-report estimate average that said it would be 106.2. So, I believe we can start to see out of that report perhaps the concern about a big wall of cattle coming here in late 2017. The probability of that maybe went down a little bit with this report we got out of USDA this week. I remind us, when you look at on feed as of August 1, we're still up 4.1% relative to a year ago. That was a little below pre-report estimate, but 4% more cattle on feed tells me more beef is coming to the marketplace as we move ahead.
How do cattle producers take and digest this information, and what's important for them? What are those key numbers that they need to maybe look at as they look ahead to managing some risk, and even as we look at the cold storage numbers, those numbers as well for pork producers? How do they maybe figure out a good way to hedge their bets?
Yeah, well, I keep reminding folks that I do think there's more downside risk in cattle markets than upside potential. However, today's report where we're looking at those placements, and we'd expect placements to be higher. It's just how much higher, and did we happily have more cattle than many of us think? I guess as I look, I think we all remember the fall of 2016. We saw fed cattle prices that moved from what was really $1.35 to about 97 cents in a big hurry. And we sit here today where we've been sliding lower on cattle prices, and we're below $1.10. If we had the same slide left to happen for 2017, then you get worried about where we go in the fourth quarter here. But perhaps the report today gives us a little bit of help that we don't have quite the same kind of decline coming still yet in 2017. I won't say it's not possible, but at least the probability is starting to go down. And those are the things that I continue to want to watch. I remind us that slaughter weights are also important in this mix as well for cattle, as we've been below a year ago for a while. And that's been helpful to overall beef supplies. But just thinking about what kind of seasonal price declines we might see in cattle, maybe a little more encouraging news as we look at today's report.
Scott, as we wrap things up today, we've talked a lot about these new pork processing facilities coming online. The new facility in Sioux City, Iowa, ran its first set of hogs through. Granted, it was only 100 head. When we see that the test and the fact that they're ready to open September 5th, does it give us some relief a little bit on the pork side of things? But what else do we need to watch with this plant coming online?
Yeah, so number one, it is great news. Yes, it's only 100 head, but it's nice to be able to see some real output going through that plant, seeing them actually test with a small run at least, and be successful in running those 100 head. I think as we look forward to them fully opening here in the next few days, I think continued emphasis on what's the labor supply available to them. Takes a lot of folks to run a plant of that size if you're going to bring it up to speed. So I expect we're going to be fairly slow as we look at that plant coming online, but having available labor supply will continue, I think, to be the largest challenge they face in continued increased runs, to where we can talk about a plant that will take a significant number of hogs on a daily basis and make sure we don't run into the same kind of slaughter constraints that we were seeing in some of 2016.
What I think I read, 10,500 will be the daily capacity when they're running one shift, and 21,000 when they're up running full capacity 2 shifts. So that's a lot of hogs and a lot of shackle space.
Getting to that 10.5 number as quickly as we can on that single shift is certainly going to be helpful to us when you look at just the supplies of hogs coming here for the remainder of 2017. And they may not get there as we get through 2017, but getting to where we're running several thousand hogs a day through that plant certainly provides a safety valve we're going to need.
Got anything else this week?
I think we've covered the main reports. It's been a busy week, and I think markets continue to search for news, and it has been a down week for a lot of these markets, but maybe a little bit of good news out of the cattle on feed report here at the end of the week for cattle markets.
All right. Have a great Friday. Enjoy this beautiful fall-like weather.
Absolutely.
And we will see you next Friday.
Very good, Megan.
So have our weekly livestock market update delivered to your email box every Saturday morning. Go to our website, brownfieldagnews.com. Click subscribe. You can also submit questions and comments there. And for market updates twice daily, make sure to check out John Perkins' Market Minute. Have a great weekend. I'm Megan Rebner on Brownfield.